Podcasts changed my life. I started listening to podcasts about 5 or 6 years ago when I moved to the West Coast, and I've gotten more value from podcasts than any mentor, any book, any movie, any video, any training, any course, any event. Podcasts are number one for me.
This Audience Summit is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Notes, the best ideas from the world's best podcasts in minutes. Chase, welcome to the Grow Your Podcast Audience Summit, brought to you by the Lewis and Kyle Show. We're very excited to have you as one of our contributors.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. Always happy to give back. And a show like this or a summit like this would have helped me out a ton. I kind of just winged it. And so I'm really excited to do this.
Absolutely. Real quick, for everyone who's not familiar with yourself personally and your show, could you give a bit of personal background and then talk about your podcast, the why you created it, a little bit of when as well, and the overall mission?
Absolutely, man. So my name's Chase Maher. I grew up on the East Coast in a sales entrepreneurial family, but investing and money management and wealth management was like never really a part of our life. It was kind of more cash in, cash out. And I moved to the West Coast about 6 years ago. And when I moved out here, I realized uh, the way that I was taught about money wasn't correct. And I started learning from people where investing it and putting it to work to create true financial freedom was what it was all about. So I'm a full-time real estate investor now, and I started my show for selfish reasons personally, so that I could learn from people that were further along in the investing world, further along in building wealth and true financial freedom. And it's turned into what it is today, where a lot of people get value from it, and I'm still getting a ton of value from it myself. It's called the Life Worth Chasing podcast. And it's mainly a real estate investing show, but also a wealth building, money management, personal finance kind of show. And stoked to be here and share all about it.
And I think that's been a very common theme among people on the summit is kind of the cliche expression that your purpose comes from your pain. You find what you're struggling with, you spend all sorts of effort figuring out how to solve it, and then you want to teach other people everything that you learn. And I think that's really encouraging for people starting out and listening to the summit, depending on what stage they're in their podcast. If there's something you really want to learn about, there's no reason not to create a podcast, because the worst result is that you learn about it, and the best result is it turns into something really exciting.
Yeah, man. Podcasts changed my life. I started listening to podcasts about 5 or 6 years ago when I moved to the West Coast, and I've gotten more value from podcasts than any mentor, any book, any movie, any video, any training, any course, any event. Podcasts are number one for me. And I really build my podcast in a way that this is the podcast I wish I had when I was 18, 19, 20, 21, and that range and beyond. I mean, there's people getting value from it that are much older than me. And so that's, you hit the nail on the head. I started it out of my pain point.
So first question for you, what has been the most effective marketing channel for growing the audience for your podcast, and in what ways have you used it?
Okay. So Twitter for sure has been the most effective. I actually had been a lurker on Twitter for years. Like, I think I started my Twitter account in 2012, and I just kind of used it for sports, news, just like random stuff. And I always liked it, but all the social media gurus always talked about Instagram and Facebook. They never talked about Twitter. And then I just realized I spent too much time on that platform to not leverage it. And so that's when I started realizing there is a real estate community there and an entrepreneur community there. It's kind of a joke. We call it money Twitter, but it's real. And, the algorithm just really connects us with like-minded people. So posting there, bringing people that have big accounts on Twitter onto my show and them retweeting it or them posting it, it's just grown really nice and organically through that route. To be honest, that is the only marketing channel or only thing I put time in. I don't put any time into doing it on Instagram. I also use Facebook and LinkedIn, but those are more like repurposing. So it's kind of just taking what I put out on Twitter and repurposing it to other platforms. I think a lot of times people try to spend too much time on every platform. And what I like to do is I consider it like a rainfall effect or a waterfall effect. So I spend my time on Twitter, and then I have a VA that basically takes my most effective tweets and takes my templates of the podcast release style template, and she pastes those into Facebook and pastes them into LinkedIn and to kind of repurpose it.
Yeah, focus on one channel has definitely been a theme that has come up over and over again on this audience summit. It's like, You got to build one bridge before and connect to the other side before anything else. So the second question for you and for everybody that is participating is, what are some underrated tactics that you've used to attract listeners to your show, maybe for you in the context of Twitter?
I think a lot of people spend too much time just promoting their show. And what I try to do is promote what I'm interested in. And then people will follow me, people will engage, and then I have a show for them to listen to. Does that make sense a little bit? Because let's think about the top podcast hosts out there. You got Joe Rogan, you got Tim Ferriss. Do they only talk about their show? No, they talk about what they're into, and they have people that start following them because they're into that same thing. And then those people listen to their podcasts because they're interested in Tim, or they're interested in Joe and what Tim and Joe's. It sucks that I'm not thinking of a woman's show, but this applies to all shows, in my opinion. It's personal. It's who the host is, what the host is into, and then it goes from there. And it also works with who the guest is. A lot of people find out about Joe or Tim's show through a certain guest. So I put more emphasis on the topics, more emphasis on the guests, and then the show is the avenue that the people get that information.
I think it makes sense. You have people interested in you because you're interesting, and you view your kind of posting on Twitter, hey, I released a new episode. That's not a marketing campaign as much as it is just a notification for the people that already would care. It's not convincing people to care in the first place.
Exactly.
Great. I like the way you contextualize that. I think that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people. Third question here. How have you converted the listeners of your show into fans? So what do you kind of think has accounted for the retention variable in the whole equation and keeping the same people coming back?
Just being yourself. When I look at my show metrics through Libsyn, it's basically, maybe 20 to 30% are probably like just for that guest or that topic. But I would say a good portion, like 50 to 80%, are 100% there for each and every episode. And so really just being myself.
Yeah, that's incredible. The fourth question for you is, if you could start your show over again with what you know now, what would you do differently to grow it more effectively?
So I would have done the exact same thing that I did, and then I would have just stayed more consistent with it. I had like a lull, like about 6 months in for a few months that really suppressed my growth with the show. It started off really well, was in new and noteworthy, had a lot of traction. So here's what I did. Then here's what I didn't do and what I would have changed. So what I did in the beginning was I had a bunch of shows in the bank, like 6 to 12 shows in the bank. I had people ready to drop a bunch of reviews. I had friends and family members that were ready to download it, and it kind of hacked the algorithm a little bit and took off really fast. Then I got fatigued. I got exhausted. Personal things came up in my life. And I went several weeks where I would just drop an episode here and there, and I wasn't that consistent. And I think that suppressed the growth of the show. And then I got back on track with consistency. Took a while, but now the trajectory is really nice again. So I would recommend having ample episodes in the bank, dropping with a lot of content to increase the amount of downloads right away, and try to focus more on leveraging audiences that are already in existence from certain guests. So getting guests on the show that have a strong audience and leveraging their audience by doing a great show and providing materials that they can share to their audience.
I think there's a ton of value there in that last part you said about making it easier for them to share. That's something that Kyle and I struggled with early on in our show is we would ask the guests to share it and they'd say they would, and then they wouldn't. And we'd be like, why is that? And maybe that's on us for being very vague. Like, what does it mean to share it? If we just said, share it on your Twitter, here's a picture for you, or here's like a pre-written summary, that might have really increased the percentage of people that shared it and could have led to more attention early on. And I think there's kind of like a double whammy there, because we've had a lot of participants in the summit say the opposite of what you said. They just started too fast and they stayed consistent, but they didn't have that bank in the beginning. They released with one episode and didn't get that big surge of downloads, or they didn't tell everyone they knew about it. So they didn't have that initial surge of ratings. So I think the real answer is both, is have, drop with 5 to 10 episodes, have everyone, ready to hit the like button day one, and then don't drop off.
Absolutely.
Last question for you. Hypothetical thought experiment. If courtesy of the Lewis and Kyle show, they gave you a $1,000 creative marketing budget to do some kind of clever way to attract listeners to your show, how do you think you would spend the money and why?
I've never spent money on the marketing or ads or anything. So what I would do with that $1,000 is I would use it to hire an editor, a virtual assistant that's an editor, and I would use it also to hire a virtual assistant that sort of manages your bookings and your content and all that, so that you as the host can focus more on the content and the ideas and the big picture. And so I would just use it on staff so that you can move faster and just focus on creating a better experience and a better show for not only the guest, but also the listeners. I don't know anything about doing the paid ads or anything like that, guys. So I can't really mention anything there.
No, that's been a common answer for sure. And it's like, you only have so much time, and spending money to give yourself more time is absolutely as high leverage of a thing as you can possibly do. But we really appreciate you coming on our summit, Chase. And, if anybody listening thought that your answers were really good and want to check out your podcast, where should we send them to find you and to find your show?
Yeah, all platforms, Life Worth Chasing podcast. You can chat with me on Twitter at I am Chase Maher. And I really enjoyed it, guys. Thanks for having me on. It was an honor. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope people got value from this. I really do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to our channel right here on YouTube. And if you feel like you learned something, share this episode on social media to help us grow our audience as well.